Hi, my name is Sherry Raymond. My pronouns are she, her. I am a career development coordinator in the Academic and Career Advising Center located in the Collins Classroom Center. Real quick, I want to mention that closed caption is available by selecting the CC button in the menu below. Today I'm going to talk through some tips on how to prepare for interviewing. Please know that we cover this in greater detail in our planned career chat events that we offer each semester. A listing of the events can be seen on the ACAC webpage. So let's get started. So you found a great job to apply for, you submitted all your documents, and now you've gotten the call back for an interview. Yes! This is a great next step in the job search process, but there's still work to do. Now you have to get ready for that interview, and you really do have to prepare. You have to do some homework, you have to practice your answers to potential questions. To help you in preparing for this, we're going to go through what I like to call the 5 R's. That is to reflect, research, rehearse, remember, and review. So the first R, reflect. This is about knowing yourself. You want to think about your strengths and weaknesses. This is also a very common question, so it will be helpful to have a prepared response. Think about your skills and attributes, and how do your skills and attributes contribute to the employer you will be interviewing with, and which one's most relevant to share? Do you have military experience? If so, great. That's the strength that you want to share. When thinking about weaknesses, I like to turn it into a positive, or instead think of challenges that I'm working on improving. What about your interests? What do you enjoy doing? How do your interests relate to the job you are interviewing for? Does the job steer you on a path toward a long-term professional goal? This is to get you thinking about talking points, and oftentimes there is a goal-related question that you should be prepared for. Next, what about your values and how do you prioritize those? It's important to define your work values and think about how those will affect your personal and professional life. Prioritize those values, define your top 5 to 10. Why is this important? We are more fulfilled and satisfied when we are working in an environment or industry that aligns with our own work values, so it's important to take time to reflect on this. Next, think about what is your preferred leadership style that you work best with. Also, know your own leadership style. This again is a common question, so it's a good idea to reflect on this. Think about past leaders that impacted you and why. Were they open to your ideas? Were they good communicators? Did they train you well for your position? Also, some of us have had experience with negative leaders, but those are also people to learn from. Expect to be Googled. Make sure that your social media is cleaned up and professional. In fact, I'd recommend doing that before you even start the job search process. Lastly, a little bit about disability and/or criminal conviction disclosure. In either case, take time to research, learn, and know your rights. Gaining knowledge in these areas ensures you advocate and protect yourself. I recommend reviewing the American with Disabilities Act or the ADA for further information on all rights pertaining to employment. You are not legally obligated to disclose your disability at the time of application or interview. If you do need an accommodation getting to the location of the interview or any time during the interview process, be unapologetic and speak to what you need. With regard to criminal conviction, in the state of Wisconsin, workers are protected from workplace discrimination because of arrest or conviction record under certain circumstances. Be prepared to provide an explanation, including how you are moving forward, and bring the conversation back to you being a good candidate for the position. Recommend consulting with the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, arrest and conviction record information, and/or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Links to resources will be available on our last slide. You are also welcome to contact our office for those resources. Above all, reflect and prepare to bring your authentic self to the interview. Take time to think through each of these areas. Write down some notes. It will help you in formulating your responses to potential questions. The next are research. You want to know the employer. You do have to do your homework here, and if you don't, they'll know. Lack of knowledge about a company or entity can come across as not being very interested in the position. Most everything can be found through the company's website and internet searches. Does it mean you have to be the expert on the company? No, but you want to be aware of some basics, such as where the main headquarters may be. Do they have several branches of the company? Is it a large company with thousands of employees or a smaller company with 15 employees? Definitely know the mission, values, and vision of the company, and do those align with the personal and work values that you reflected on. Be aware of issues in the news. Google works both ways. Look up the company, ask questions. Especially if there's negative coverage, there's always two sides to the story. Know the job description for which you're being interviewed, meaning I hope you saved that when you were applying. It's a good idea to have the job description and bring it with you to the interview. What about this required versus preferred qualifications? Well, hopefully you've applied for and are interviewing for a position in which you meet many of the required qualifications. And those preferred qualifications are like bonus points. Speak to the ones you meet, it's great. Also, if you don't meet the preferred qualifications, that's okay too. As you do your research, develop your question list for the employer. You must have questions. Yes, many may get answered while you were going through the interview, and that's okay. You will still have some on your list by the end, and or you'll come up with more as you go. So on the next slide is some sample questions that you could ask. These are not exhaustive of things that you could consider asking, but it may be some ideas to help get you started. So things like, what does a typical day look like? What challenges might one face in this position? What's your favorite part about working in this role? Note that this is not the time to ask about salary or benefits or paid time off. Those are conversations to have when you are being offered the position. Next, moving into rehearse. So you want to be sure to rehearse, practice, and be prepared for any type of interview and also the questions. So the three most common types of interview are going to be telephone, virtual, or in person. Screening interviews or first round interviews are when employers may utilize the phone or virtual interview. For either of these, I used to say dress the part. That means me dressing professional if that helps get your head in the game, so to speak. However, sometimes just dressing in comfy clothes can help us focus. So dress for whatever is going to help you be most successful in that phone or virtual interview. However, if it is a virtual interview, dress professionally for where the camera can see you. For remote or virtual interviews, make sure to verify time zone, make sure you're in a quiet place with no distractions, that you have good lighting and good internet, and a neutral background, nothing distracting. For the in-person interview, plan for professional attire. You don't have to break the bank for this. It's okay to borrow attire. There's also the closet on campus, or invest in a few budget-friendly pieces that you can mix and match with things you may already have. Also, anyone get nervous for an interview, feel anxious, or have imposter syndrome? A big part of rehearsal is also about helping one calm the nerves. The job search process and interviewing can trigger all sorts of thoughts or emotions. It's a time of professional vulnerability. So let's talk through some things to help through this. First, imposter syndrome. What is it? Imposters suffer from self-doubt and a sense of intellectual fraudulence that override any feelings of success or external proof of their competence. So this is feeling like you're a fraud, or you'll be found out in the process, you're not going to belong, you don't have the skills they're looking for. Any of that sounding familiar? It's hard to shine in an interview and explain all the cool skills and knowledge we have when we are letting imposter syndrome and or anxiety overtake us. So we have to quiet that negative self-talk and turn to positives, your capabilities, your accomplishments, your creativity. Build yourself up from the inside out. Then add in that the employer already knows you are qualified for the job because you had a well-written resume showcasing all that you have done and currently do. So let's dig a little bit deeper with some strategies to add to this to help. So first, perspective. The interview is about meeting with you. Yes, you're asking you some questions, but ultimately it's about social skills. They are trying to see if they can work with you, and you are trying to see if you can work with them. It's about analyzing and thinking about fit. And thinking about, can you envision yourself in that work environment? And the only way you and the employer are going to know the answers to that is by meeting with you. Next, practice, practice, practice. You're hearing this a lot today, and it's because it's true. Practice helps you be prepared to speak to your strengths and accomplishments. It helps you refine your communication so that you can answer questions clearly and concisely. Practice will also help you in hearing and formulating responses to questions you may not have been prepared for. Think of all that you have gained, knowledge, skills, experience, accomplishment. It all brings you to this moment. If it helps you, make a list of all the things that you are really good at. Lastly, calming those nerves. After gaining perspective and practicing, this should help combat some of those nerves as well as temper any negative thoughts. There is also a breathing technique that can be really helpful. Breathing helps center us and calm our bodies. One strategy that you can use is something called the box or square method. This is simply doing inhaling for a 4 count, holding for a 4 count, exhaling for a 4 count, holding for a 4 count, and just simply repeating that. This shifts the focus to within yourself. Again, help center you and quiet you. It's also something you can start to do if you start to feel nervous when you get to that interview. Refocus on that breathing and help get centered. Now, it is worth noting that these are tips for short-term anxiety or stress, and if you find yourself really struggling with persistent and or severe anxiety, please consult with a professional, and resources are available on campus. Moving on to remember. So remember is an effective approach to take for situational and or behavioral questions, which are very common questions with many interviews. So these are questions like, tell me about a time when, or how did you or would you do XYZ? So the STAR method is a very common method that's used for this. So the first part of STAR is S, situation. This sets up your story and provides context for the situation. The T is for task. Define the task or problem you were asked to solve. The A is for action. What steps did you take to complete the task? And result. State the end result. Other items to remember: get a good night's sleep the night before. Dress appropriately, one step above the interview panel. Check for directions before you leave. Have the name and contact information of the office and give yourself plenty of times to get there. This is not something you want to be late for. Be professional and polite once you arrive on the premises. Bring your materials, your resume, job description, pen, paper, your questions. Make sure your cell phone is silenced. Be sure to introduce yourself upon arrival. Be conscious of body language, show interest, make appropriate eye contact, listen carefully, take notes. Also, take your time with those questions and to help calm those nerves. So here are some sample questions that you may be asked in an interview, and these would be some really good ones, particularly like describe a situation. That's where you could be practicing that STAR method. What do you do when priorities change quickly? Tell me about a time when. You can be practicing the STAR method with any of those. Next, we do in fact have a resource on our website called Big Interview. This is a virtual interviewing tool. You can in fact record yourself answering questions. It can be really helpful to hear a playback and assess how you're answering the questions, what are things you're speaking to, and help you refine what some of your answers might be. Then, after the interview, some things to think about. First, you want to say thank you. You want to be sure to follow up with the interviewer with either an email. That's most common these days. You can certainly send a handwritten note, just thanking them for their time and consideration. Then you want to reflect on the process. How did you do? Were there questions or topics you weren't prepared for? Really think through the fit. Also, you're reflecting on not only your performance, but also, did it feel like it was the right opportunity for you? And if you're offered the position, are you interested? Did you, or did you learn things along the way that have you maybe thinking it's not going to be the right fit for you? Lastly, also think about, what if you don't get the job? You want to be prepared to be gracious and thankful for the opportunity. Every interview is an opportunity to learn. So a few more things, items to be aware of. Illegal questions, don't bring these up, and you don't have to answer these questions. If they are asked any of these topics, you can answer it, or you can sidestep it, or you can ask how it's relevant to the job. There's a little bit more on criminal backgrounds here, also religion. You cannot be discriminated against for your religious beliefs or practices. If, for example, scheduling the interview conflicts with a religious event or practice, you can share those details or not. Know that if you do share the details, it cannot be used against you in the hiring process. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is your go-to resource for more information or to file a complaint. You can also look at resources on the Department of Workforce Development. That would be for state issues. These are examples of illegal questions that could be phrased in an interview, and again, you would not be having to answer these. A couple other things to be or have awareness of: microaggressions can happen in the interview. Microaggressions are defined as the everyday, subtle, intentional, and oftentimes unintentional interactions or behaviors that communicate some sort of bias toward historically marginalized groups. Often people who commit microaggressions might not even be aware they're doing it. If comments are made during the interview by one person, that's one thing. However, if they aren't corrected or continue throughout the interaction, this tells you some things to know about the work environment. That also may impact whether or not you're still interested. If it's really atrocious, you can, if it's really atrocious and offensive, you can end the interview. You don't have to pursue that. Have an awareness of that there are 5 generations in the workforce. You may be interviewed by someone from a later or earlier generation than yourself, and they may have different communication preferences. Work visas for international workers. When scheduling the interview, verify that the position is still eligible for the H-1B visa or optional practical training, OPT. By this point, if this pertains to you, most likely your job search started by ensuring that you are applying to jobs that provide these sponsorships. Going Global is a great resource to search for employers that have H-1B or OPT sponsorships. Lastly, if you're interviewing internationally, utilize the Going Global resource on our website. They include a specific section on interviewing advice that covers interview prep as well as cultural do's and don'ts. These are some additional resources that are available on our website. Feel free to check those out. I think practice interviewing with Big Interview is a great resource, as well as some candid career videos that we have. I thank you so much for your time. Please feel free to reach out to us if you'd like to schedule time with your career development coordinator. You are welcome to do so simply by contacting our office. And lastly are some resources that were covered in this video. I thank you so much for your time today and wish you well in your search.